I was 22, I was in a bad car accident, and clinically, I died.
I could see my body being pulled to the shore, and I could see the guys start CPR.
I actually felt my body shut down.
Instantly, I was out of my body.
I was fast approaching a magnificent city, golden and gleaming among vibrant colors. Remarkably, the light didn't shine on things, but through them, through the grass, through the trees, through the walls.
He enveloped me with so much warmth and love, and his eyes were piercing eyes. It was like they permeated every part of me.
I was looking at a magnificent landscape, exploding with beauty and color.
Forests of symmetrical trees, unlike anything on Earth. They covered the foothills on each side.
I've never ever felt more alive than I did then. I was home.
I was home. I was where I belonged.
It was as if this was the place I had been searching for my whole life, and I'd found it.
As we begin our message today, I encourage you, if you're at home and you want to follow along, you can get on our website, gv.church. Just go to sermon notes, and you'll be able to follow along on there. There's an opportunity to enter in your own notes, and then you can actually email it to yourself when the service is done, so you can keep those that way. But we are in week 3 of our Imagine Heaven series, where our goal has been to begin to form some mental pictures of heaven, or at least some good ones. All of us have thoughts about heaven, but sometimes, often, even in the church as Christians, our view of heaven is pretty poor. We're not excited about it. Doesn't do anything for us except for maybe bore us or turn us away. But if we have a correct view of heaven, it will begin to ignite a fire within us, exciting us about what's coming. So we've been trying to form some mental pictures of heaven. And so you may ask yourself, well, what other benefit could there be to doing a 6-week series on heaven? I mean, it seems like that's all about what's coming. What does that have to do with life here and now? I want to read from C.S. Lewis, one of the benefits that he said about considering heaven and the life to come. He said this: a continual looking forward to the eternal world is not, as some modern people think, a form of escapism or wishful thinking, but one of the things a Christian is meant to do. It does not mean that we leave the present world as it is. In other words, we don't just say, who cares about this world? If you read history, you will find the Christians who did most for the present world were just those who thought most of the next. So there is a correlation, there's a connection between thinking properly about heaven, having a vivid picture of heaven in your mind, and making a big impact in this world, and how you love people, and the difference that your life makes here and now. So that's why we go through this series. That's why we're trying to form these pictures of heaven, because it will impact your everyday life. I want us to take a quick recap of where we've been so far as we've been trying to imagine heaven, okay? We began in the first week just talking about how, these won't be in your notes, but just a quick recap, that how our lives do not end when we die. The medical community is coming to terms with recorded data of multitudes, scores of people who have had a near-death experience. So these are people who died, who left their bodies, even watched as doctors were operating on them from above in the room, and then they went somewhere else. They had an experience of heaven, and these people's experiences became very life-changing. It changed them dramatically, just like we're talking about for us. The testimony of those who died and got a glimpse of heaven is that heaven is far better than we've ever even imagined or dreamed. It was like this life, but so much better. People testified that they never felt more alive. They never were more aware of their surroundings and life. They never felt deeper peace or greater joy than they did in heaven. In fact, they said that's real life, and life when they came back into their bodies it's dull and it's like a foggy dream now, life on earth is, compared to the experience in heaven. They said instead of 5 senses, it was like I had 50 senses. Heaven was far better than we've imagined. These people also found that relationships were significant, more meaningful in heaven. That the people that they knew in this life, whether it was a spouse, whether it was family, friends, other people that they loved, that many of those people they saw in heaven, and that those relationships were more meaningful. They were deeper, like they knew them better than ever before. They had a deeper understanding of who they were. Not only did they understand others, but we didn't even get into this too much, but they understood themselves better than ever. One person said, the first person that you meet in heaven is you. You see yourself for the first time ever, like never before. So these are some of the mental pictures we've been trying to imagine over the last couple of weeks. Today we're going to continue to build on those mental pictures, and we're going to do so by considering how we have yet to experience God's most beautiful creations. That the stuff that we love so much in this world, the mountains and the beaches and even the grass and all the good stuff that we love about this world, that it is nothing compared to the experience of heaven and the life to come. You know, in this life, we're able to experience a measure of joy because we can see things and we can touch things. We can taste and smell and hear, right? Our 5 senses. All of God's good, beautiful creation. We see God's handiwork in a purple or pink or red sunset. We hear God's creative genius in the birds, and everyone has a unique song that they sing. We taste the variety of inventions that God came up with foods that we enjoy and eat, and the wisdom He gave man to make different kinds of foods. We love our artistic works. We love to touch the artistic works of God in the softness of a baby's face, or like yesterday as Alicia and I were checking out landscaping stuff and we're touching and feeling all these jagged, rough-edged rocks. We smell the wonderful sense that God made in creation, the flowers, right, the food, all of that stuff. Now, I want you to take just a moment. This is personal for you, right? Take just a moment. Think about the place that you've been to here on this planet that is your favorite place ever to go, to step foot on. It was the most beautiful, most wonderful experience you've ever had in a location. A place that makes you say, I want to go back there someday. Or I wish I could go back there someday. For me, that place is Israel. I loved my trip to Israel. The sights, the sounds, the people, the scents, all the different sites we went to, and the landscape. It was awesome, and I would love to go back to that place. Now, think about your place. All that beauty, right? All the sights, the sounds, the fragrances, flavors, the textures. As beautiful as that is, as awesome as it is, one day, your experience of heaven will far exceed anything like that place. It will be like that place, but so much better. According to Scripture, God has saved the best for last. And when we open the gift of heaven, we will wonder how we ever lived without it. It's because heaven is going to far exceed any beauty on this decaying earth. You ever had one of those, you've got to see this for yourself kind of moments? Like the kind of moment where you're trying to describe something to somebody, but it's like it's this crazy thing that's happening. It's like I can't believe this is happening. What's going on here? And so you say, you're trying to talk to him, you're trying to get the words out, but you can't find the words for the thing you're trying to tell him. So you say, hey, just come here. Just come with me. Come on, come see this thing. Well, I had one of those moments not long ago. Now, I will say this. It probably won't amaze you if you're from Colorado. Those of you who are watching, you're Coloradans, you're going to say, Bob, big deal, right? The thing that amazed me was hail. Hail, right? We're in hail season here in Colorado. Where I grew up in Michigan, we had lots of snow, lots of cold, but I don't know that I ever remember us having hail. Now, maybe we did, but I don't remember it. So I've been in Colorado about 6 years, and I'm still fascinated by hail when I watch it. A couple years back, we were out in eastern Colorado, and we had this crazy hailstorm. And when it was coming down at the peak of that storm, it was just nuts. The hail was just so loud, and it was raining with it. And it was like river of water was running over the street. And so I took out my phone, and I captured it on video. And then I went inside, and I told the family, guys, you got to come out here and see this. Come and see this. Hurry up. So I got Alicia and the boys. Addison wasn't born yet, but got them all out on the front porch, and we're watching this crazy hailstorm. And it was just amazing. I was like, I tried to tell them, hey, there's this hailstorm's coming. It's going. You got to see it. Just come out here. Come see it. Hey, watch this video, and you get to see it. So seeing that storm and experiencing it firsthand on the porch far exceeded anything that I could tell Alicia and the boys. When they got out there and they saw it for themselves, it was like, whoa, this is the coolest thing ever, right? They were loving it. Heaven is going to far exceed anything that we've experienced on this earth. It's going to be similar, but far better. But it's going to be kind of one of those, you've just got to go and see it for yourself kind of things. That we can't quite grab a hold of it until we experience it ourselves. But in the meantime, what we can do is do our best to imagine it, to picture it, to get a visual image of what it's going to be like, or images of what it's like. And one of the best ways to do that is from the Scriptures and from people who have claimed to have gone there. And their experience matches what Scripture says. And so I want us to hear from somebody who has experienced a taste, a glimpse of heaven. Dale Black was a pilot who died in a plane crash. He was with two other pilots, and they were just the three of them together in a plane. And the plane crashed. The other two died. And he experienced, as he died, a little bit of the beauty of heaven. So let's watch Dale's testimony.
You know, I mean, you are a captain. You're an engineer mind, and have run multi-million-dollar businesses in the airline industry, and yet this experience has defined your life, hasn't it?
That's an understatement, but yes, it is true.
So
true.
take us back to that day. That was the very plane that took the lives of the other two pilots with you.
Yeah.
What happened? What do you remember after that crash?
I hovered above the crash site, watching, learning, asking questions, followed the ambulance. My body was put in the ambulance, raced to the hospital, even though they thought I was dead to begin with. Their life came back in me. I went into the hospital, but not in my body, but above it. In the emergency room, they were working on me, doctors and nurses, cutting my gray slacks and shirt off. I was all bloodied, and I was pretty much of a mess. But I watched this from what looked like a bird's eye view, and I saw all the commotion going on. I'm asking questions. I had this life review of one moment in my life. Not all my life, just one moment of my life. And it was when I was in the 5th grade where I had prayed to receive Jesus into my heart as a young 11 and 12-year-old kid. And I was full of zeal for God at that time, wanted to live for Him with my life, and I was genuine and sincere. But when this flashback took place in the emergency room, when I was in this accident, I realized that I was no longer that young kid who loved God. I was a kid who had kind of lost my way and loved my life and loved my goals and my dreams because it was all about me. It was all about what I wanted, not what God wanted. And I was sad about what had become of me. I mean, I still knew God. I still knew there was a God, and I did know that Jesus was His Savior, but I had lost my way along the path of living for myself. And but the grief and all suddenly departed, and I moved out of the hospital into a deep outer space. Long story there, it's in the book, of course, but I saw this city of gold this golden, brilliant, it was white light in the center, but it moved out and it was a ball of heavy, thick gold light. And all the colors in the rainbow were in the white, but what I saw was the white and the gold. And as I got closer and closer, Pastor John, I knew that this was the city, a holy city. I knew I was in heaven.
You're coming, like flying into a city.
Yeah, flying into a city, approaching and decelerating and descending. Why God would do that?
Only God would do that for a pilot, right? Does that mean I'm going to be kicking a soccer ball through the gate?
It means that we're going to have to go through flying lessons here pretty soon. Yeah, I'll help.
No, but that's just so fascinating. Did it feel like flying? I mean,
no, there was no sensations of G-forces or physical distortion of the eyes squinting. None of that. There was no discomfort in any way. But travel was extremely fast, and then it began to slow down as I got near what I called the city of God. I knew it was the city of God, and I knew God reigned here, but He was in the light. And it was on the other side, there was a wall around the city.
How big was the city?
The city was huge, way larger than anything like Paris or London or Beijing or anything, Mexico City, way bigger than that. And what I saw, and I'm able to kind of quickly judge distances, because you're trained to do that, but about 40 miles into the city, way back beyond the wall, there was an event going on that is, it's easy to describe when I write it, because I can write better than I can speak. Sorry about that. But there was, of course, the mountains and the flowers and the air, all the things that you've mentioned before. But there was this humongous crowd of people and angels that I was able to see from a long way away. I was looking over the wall, but still on the outside of the city. And this group of people and angels were moving with the music, and they were moving in praise and swaying with the music, and talk about oneness and unity and love.
So I want you to describe, since we're talking about the beauty of the surrounding landscape around this city and in the city. And
how do you describe it? Everything's perfect. I remember the first thing I noticed coming into the city was, if I may, just the grass. The grass was so incredible. I mean, it was an aha moment, we would say. I just took my breath away because I never seen grass that was wild and perfectly manicured, yet mankind, no human being, no angel had to touch it. light came through the grass from the source of the light, which is God himself. It pulsated in the grass itself. Every blade was not bent or twisted. It was perfection. It looked more like velvet. And that's just the grass.
But you know what's so... You got to read Imagine Heaven, because so many people talk about the grass, and they can't stop describing it.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow. I mean, it's crazy.
I was seared by this experience a few years after the crash. I had to find some kind of job to pay for my flight training lessons, and it just so happened God had me become a golf course greens consultant. So for a year and a half,
rub it in, like, this is not even close.
I would just rub that grass all day. Yeah, it was weird, but true story. A year and a half of my life was spent with grass on golf courses. That's just one story.
So you told me as you were flying in, back behind the city was a mountain range.
Yeah, beautiful mountains, very much like these that you just showed, but not mountains you would want to conquer in any way, but mountains you would just revere.
What do you mean?
Because of the majesticness that God created. You just look at the mountains and just go, wow, oh my gosh. But maybe unlike you, because you might be there when you're there, you might look at the mountains and take more time to do so. But I was more interested in what was happening with the people, the God's creation.
So, I love the differences in these people's testimonies. There's always certain parts they highlight, certain things that they emphasize. But the more of these that you read, and you have to do the homework yourself, the more that you read or the more that you hear of these testimonies, the more things start lining up in your own heart and mind. You're like, that's the same thing that this other person was talking about. And that's what the scriptures say. So I encourage you to do the homework. Read Imagine Heaven if you get a chance. It's in your sermon notes. There's links for it if you haven't picked it up yet. But I encourage you to consider that. But we might ask ourselves, well, what is it that makes heaven so astounding, right? If it's kind of like earth and life on this earth, and yet it's so much better than this life, why is it so much better? What makes the grass so amazing in heaven compared to life here? Well, it's a couple of things. First, it is the absence of something. It's the absence of sin. There's no sin there. And therefore, there's no death there, no decay there. So it's the absence of one thing, and it's the presence of something else, which is the presence of God. Now, Scripture teaches us that God is present here in this world, but not in His full measure, not in all of His glory and all of His closeness. So there's no sin and death and decay, and there is the presence of God. And those two things are what makes heaven heaven in all of its beauty. You know, see, God created humanity to live on earth with Him, His presence in all of its goodness. No sin. Heaven and earth, you might say, were one together. But when humanity chose to disobey the one command God said, don't eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, when we said we're going to do that anyway, then the presence of God in heaven with Him was removed from the earth. So, we don't experience life like we were meant to. And the heart of God was broken. God longs to be with humanity. He longs for us to be together with Him. That's why He made us, to be in His presence and for us to be together in close relationship. And ever since humanity has rejected God's good and loving rule and reign, we've been dealing with the consequences of our sin and the consequences of the absence of God's presence in its fullest measure. We call this whole thing the fall, where humanity fell from our wonderful good state that God had made for us. You see, the scriptures say God made us in His image, and we're talking about why is heaven so great? Well, God made us in His image, and He made us as the pinnacle of His creation, the top the top created being. Now, we may not be the strongest being, and we may not be the largest and all these other things, but we are the most unique, and we are the most significant creation of God's. We're the top. So when we fell, Scripture says it affected everything underneath us. All the rest of creation, because we're the top, was affected by us. Things much larger than us, things much more powerful than us, were affected by our decision. So, the earth, the sun, the moon, the stars, the animals, the trees, the oceans, the universe, the cosmos were all broken. And we gave not only ourselves a death sentence, but we gave all of creation a death sentence. You know, I don't know if you know this, but modern science supports this reality that the cosmos is dying. They talk about this idea of the cosmos cooling off as energy in the universe slowly breaks down. It's all breaking down. It's all decaying. And we see that in our own bodies, right? We hit about 30 and then it's all downhill after that. Now, this is an elementary illustration, okay? So I know this is kind of a crude and very basic illustration, but it is one way of trying to imagine what heaven is like. I've got a few pictures I want to show you. The first picture is what I would call life as it is now. And this picture is life here on this earth with sin and death and decay, and without the presence of God in all of its fullness. And so life is grayed and murky. It's like a black and white overlay is how we see and how we experience life. That's what life now is like. The next picture is life with just one of those two things changed. Life with sin removed. So let's just say if there was no more sin, if there was no more death and decay and all those things, then we have more color in life. There's more beauty. There's more clarity. And yet, even if sin has been removed, we're still missing the presence of God in all of His fullness. The next picture is heaven. Sin has been removed. God, in all of His glorious, loving presence and power, is near. And this picture is vivid. Now, if you put these two pictures side by side in the next slide, putting life now and life to come next to each other, we see a glaring disparity. Right? Life now is black and white and gray and foggy and murky. Life to come in heaven is vivid. That's a good way of thinking about what heaven is like. It's like this life, but so much better. Listen to how Paul describes the effects of the fall on creation. Not just humanity as part of creation, but all of creation. And how there is this longing for the effects of the fall to be removed. One of the two parts we talked about. Romans chapter 8, Paul says, against its will, all creation was subjected to God's curse. But with eager hope, the creation looks forward to the day when it will join God's children. So I want you to be clear. We're talking about inanimate objects, right? There's a kind of a personification going on here. Paul's talking about the creation because he makes a differentiation between it and then God's children, the people of God. The creation looks forward to the day when it will join God's children in glorious freedom from what? From death and decay. We know that all creation has been groaning as in the pains of childbirth right up to the present time. And so Paul says creation is looking forward to this sin and death and decay to be removed from it. Kind of like a mom, Paul says, who's like at 40 weeks, or whatever, she's full term, whatever. She's ready to deliver that baby. She's tired of the backaches and the pain and the suffering and the difficulty that comes with being pregnant and just longing for the delivery, for something beautiful to be born and the pain to be removed. Of course, there's always more pain after childbirth. I get it, right? I don't get it, but I get it. This is part of why heaven is so wonderful. The pain and difficulty has been removed. You know, a buddy of mine from college, he lived most of his adult life with back pain, kind of right in the middle of his back. And all you medical people are already assessing what his problem was. But because he pretty much always had this pain in the middle of his back as far as he could remember, back into his even younger days, he just assumed that this is part of life and this is how it is. Some people just have back pain, and I have back pain, and so I've got some problems. I'll just live with it. Well, a few years ago, he started to have chest pains as well at night, and this really heavy feeling, and so he was concerned maybe he's got heart problems or something, so he goes to the doctor, checks, and they check all of his heart and all that stuff first. They know that's not the problem. The problem is your gallbladder needs to be removed. So he has his gallbladder removed, and after some time, he's had some time to heal up and begin to feel better from that surgery. He noticed that something's different. Like the gallbladder problems, of course, was causing some issues, and he knew that, and so now that's gone, but something else is different. Like he felt different. He felt better. He felt lighter. He couldn't put his finger on it. Then all of a sudden, he had a light bulb moment. He says, my back doesn't hurt anymore. The pain that was in the middle of his back for years was gone, and it was being caused by his gallbladder. He was like, I never made the connection between the two. And all of a sudden, he feels lighter and better, and he just feels wonderful because this pain has been removed from him. I think this is how heaven is going to be, to a far surpassing measure. Each of us is carrying around the weight, the pain of living in this fallen world. Even if you're already a follower of Jesus, a Christian, you're still carrying around the weight of living in a fallen world. And it's a burden that many of us, we've kind of gotten used to. But in moments, we're like that mom in her pregnancy that says, I want this baby to be delivered. I just want to be free from this. I don't know if you've ever had a moment like that where you say, I wish I didn't have to carry the weight of this world, living here. But we were born into it. We've kind of always carried it on our backs in some ways, so we sometimes just assume that this is just how life is. And it is just how life is in this fallen world. But there's another world. One day, we're going to find that in heaven, the burden of life in this fallen world has been lifted off of our backs. It's going to be taken away, and we will feel lighter than ever. We will feel more alive than ever, better than ever, because the presence of sin and death and decay will have been removed once and for all from our lives. And we will enter into the glorious presence of God. And as Paul said, we will enter into the glorious freedom from death and decay. In the book of Hebrews, I have one last passage I want to share. The author describes people who have put their hope in this God, who promises a better world to come. A world where all the pain of this world is lifted and His glorious presence is there, and it is like this life, but so much better. Hebrews chapter 11 has all of these people, we call them the heroes of the faith. All these people who follow God that are in the Bible, in all their stories, and it talks about all the things that happened to them. And then it gets to this point, Hebrews chapter 11, verse 13. All these people died still believing what God had promised them. God had made them a promise. They did not receive what was promised in this life, but they saw it from a distance and they welcomed it. Kind of like imagine heaven. They're imagining it, looking forward to it, planning for it, like retirement, right? But something much better. They agreed that they were foreigners and nomads on this earth. These people said, this is not my home, this fallen world. Now, obviously, people who say such things are looking forward to a country they can call their own. Now, if they had longed for the country they came from, they could have gone back. But they were looking for a better place, a heavenly homeland. That is why God is not ashamed to be called their God. for he has prepared a city for them. I love all the language in that passage. A homeland, a better place, a city, and all of these adjectives. And other places in the Scripture say a new heaven and a new earth, and then there's heaven, and then there's this world to come, a world of righteousness, all kinds of descriptors about this place. This wonderful place God is preparing for those who love Him. We have yet to experience God's most beautiful creations. It's part of what we're trying to picture. Got a couple of steps I want you to consider today as we're looking at this reality that heaven is far better than we imagine, and the creation, the physical creation is far more beautiful. I want you to consider a couple things. First, I want you to consider this. I want you to imagine heaven. That's the whole point of the series. Have you taken any time yet in this series to stop and try to picture it? I want you to imagine heaven. So the next time you're out in creation, maybe you're enjoying the mountains here in Colorado Springs, or maybe you're in some other part of the country if you're watching today, wherever you're at, whatever you're doing, whenever you get out in creation, be present in that moment. Take it all in and try to imagine heaven. Imagine it being similar to your surroundings, but way better. Say, okay, it's going to be like this. Like as you're maybe at Garden of the Gods, it's going to be like the kissing camels. Maybe to be kissing angels, I don't know. But to be something different, right? It's going to be better. Probably not kissing angels. Just imagine the rocks. But better rocks, right? Do it. Imagine it. Try to imagine over the next few weeks as we go through the series. Imagine heaven. Ask God to illuminate your imagination. I believe He will. Second, how are you managing your life? How are you managing your life? Are you living for this life only? In other words, are you treating your possessions, your home, your vehicles, your time, your talents as if they were only things that were part of this world which is passing away? Or are you putting all of your hope in a better place? Are you investing all of your life here and now in a better home, in a heavenly homeland that is yet to come? Are you living as if heaven is real and it's coming, and how I live now matters for what I'm going to experience there? Well, we're getting ready to worship this morning in the last song. As we do, I want you to consider these questions. And for some of you, I want you to consider, do I have communion with the Lord, with God? Do I have relationship with Jesus? Am I interacting with Him because Jesus is the path to heaven? He's the way. Like knowing Him and engaging with Him, being His disciple, He's the way. Do I have relationship with the one who leads us to heaven?